everybody, and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. If you don't already know who I am, my name is Mira Scarlett, and today I'm going to show you some of my favorite sewing tools and essentials that I use in my workshop almost every day. Let's go check them out. These here are some of my absolute favorite tools that I use when I sew. Mainly what I do is create cosplays from scratch. So I have my sewing machine here, I have my cutting tools, my pins, weights, clips, seam rippers, other fun essentials. So I'm going to go over each and every one of these with you guys so you know exactly what I use, and if you're interested in picking any of these up yourself, I will have links in the description below to almost everything that I discuss in this video. Alright you guys, so the first sewing essential that I want to go over with you is actually what is covering my desk right now, which is this big boy. And this right here is my self-healing cutting mat. And mine in particular is a big one that measures at 48 by 36 inches. I personally like one of this big size because it fits on my whole work desk area, so I'm able to cut out big pieces of fabric, such as if you're cutting out a long dress or pants, you have more of a work area to actually cut on. And what makes these mats so incredible is using these really cool blades here. These are called rotary blades. The way that it works with this mat is that whenever you cut, it does not leave a permanent gouge in your mat. This mat has self-healing capabilities. So any of the cut lines will heal back together, so you're not going to have big thick gouges that are going to ruin your work area. Rotary cutters come in a variety of different sizes, and each one is different and will help you with different projects. The first one is the 28 millimeter, then we have this size here, the 45 millimeter, and then lastly the 60 millimeter. There are other sizes, but these are the three most common sizes. As for the smaller 28 millimeter blade, I personally like to use this one to cut out pattern pieces. The reason I use this for cutting out pattern pieces is because it's lightweight and it's easy to maneuver and cut around curves. It makes cutting out patterns so much easier, and it's way less exhausting than using scissors. It's also obviously much quicker. With the 45 millimeter blade, I like to use this just to cut out just basic fabrics. Lastly, the 60 millimeter blade is the bigger one that I use for heavier duty fabrics, as well as cutting multiple layers of fabric. For example, this heavy upholstery fabric here, you can cut between 2 layers. You can double it up even to make 4 layers. And it does a great job at getting through those heavier, tougher, thicker fabrics. Alright, and while having a rotary cutter is great, you can't use it for every single project, and it's still really important to have your essential scissors with you as well. So I'm going to show you my favorite brand of scissors, which is every seamstress's favorite brand of scissors, I feel like, and those are the Ginger type dressmaker shears. And I personally have been using these since I started sewing. I began teaching myself how to sew in 2012, and we actually had a silver pair that was passed down to me and my mother from my grandmother, and they lasted for years and years and years and years, and they might even still be at the old house and still work. But remember, if you do invest in these lovely, beautiful things, make sure you keep them away from everybody else in your household that does not realize that these can only be used to cut fabric. Fabric. Only fabric. Do not cut anything else except for maybe threads. Threads is fine. Do not cut anything else but fabric with your fabric scissors. If you use these on paper, on foam, on anything else, it's going to ruin these, so protect your babies. Only use them for fabric. Alright, so another pair of scissors that I really enjoy using are pinking shears. And they basically look like regular scissors until you open them up and you see that they have a lovely zigzag pattern. The point of this zigzag pattern is basically to minimize fraying. That's the whole point of having pinking shears, is it will cut a zigzag pattern instead of just a typical straight, just like a straight cut. And that will help prevent the raw edges from fraying quite as much, and it'll help minimize damage to your fabric. All right, and while this last pair of scissors isn't technically necessary, I personally think it makes a really big difference in your workflow and also with putting strain on your poor little hands. But I highly suggest getting a pair of thread snippers, just little nips like this. It'll just make it a lot easier to snip threads, because honestly, it's way less strenuous on your hands and your wrist when you're cutting threads with something like this instead of a heavy pair of other scissors. So they're not very expensive. I highly suggest investing in a pair of these, or just a pair of little scissors that'll make it easy to do little snips and even to cut little notches into your pattern pieces. So yeah, I love these little guys. All right, so while we're on the subject of sharp things like rotary cutters and scissors, let's go ahead and talk about one of the absolute most important tools that any seamstress needs ever. And it's also our worst enemy, but our best friend as well. It's a love-hate relationship. But of course, I'm talking about the seam ripper. So with the seam ripper, you use this to basically correct any mistakes you make. This little guy will go in and it can rip out seams and stitches you've already put in. So these are absolutely essential. If you're going to be sewing, you need one. You absolutely need one. And they come in all different types of styles. This one particularly is just a small basic one, probably the cheapest one you can get. They do dull very quickly, but so do most seam rippers. And if you're like me, you'll be using it a lot, so that'll make it dull even quicker. They do make bigger sized ones, such as this. I much prefer the tinier ones. But then you've got ones like this, which are still really tiny, but they have a nice big handle so you can grip it properly and have a little bit more control. It has this little kind of gummy rubbery bit here, and that is for helping once you've seam ripped, all those little pieces of thread from your torn apart stitches and seams are still sometimes present in that fabric. This acts as kind of an eraser to just kind of erase those little, get those threads out of the little holes and get them off of your fabric so that you can start over and have everything be nice and clean. Something that I actually started doing when I began working in alterations, like to use straight up razor blades.
I'll be right there, darling.
The reason for this is they are cheaper because you can buy them in bulk, and they're sharper. If you get used to it, this can honestly be a great way, or really a great alternative to seam rippers. But you need to be very, very careful. I wouldn't recommend this for most people, to be honest. It's something that I got used to and I like to use it. I'll kind of go over and show you guys how I do it, so that you kind of get an idea of how that works. The way that I do it is I hold both ends pretty taut, hold the safe side of it, and then just do like this. Make sure your fabric is out of the way, but you just pull it taut, and then you've got those exposed threads there. Just obviously be really careful to not cut yourself. But it's pretty quick. So just make sure that when you do it that you are safe, okay? If you don't feel confident doing it, just get this guy for like $1. It's okay. It's okay. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about are fabric weights. And you can buy fabric weights in places like Joann's, almost anywhere. They do have commercial fabric weights, but they're honestly unnecessarily expensive. So something that I've learned from many other cosplayers is to use heavy washers. So these are pretty cheap. I bought mine on Amazon. They're just, heavy little discs that will help you keep your fabric in place when you are cutting, particularly on a self-healing cutting mat with a rotary blade. That's what's going to help you, maneuver around and keep your fabric in place and make sure that your measurements and your cutting is more accurate. All right, so the next little tool that I want to show you guys is something that is, to me, an absolute game changer when it comes to productivity, because this little thing is going to save you so much time compared to trying to do this by hand. And it is called a bodkin. So I've been using this for years to feed elastic through channels. It's for, you can do elastic, cord, ribbon, and it's basically to help it much more easily go through very narrow channels. You can also use it, as I said, in waistbands, and also for putting like cording in like the edge of a hood. It helps a lot getting in that tight area. There are different types. This one here is the pincher style. There's also a flexible type. There is a ballpoint type. And then if you don't have any of those available and it's difficult to get to and you need something on the fly, you can simply just use a safety pin. That will also work as well. This is the pincher style bodkin. And so what you do is you get your piece of elastic or ribbon or cord. You pinch this onto the edge, and then there's a little doodad right here, and you're just going to slide that down to lock it into place. And then here I have just a simple tube, and so instead of trying to do this by hand and finagle it through with just the flimsy waistband, you can use this guy, put it into the edge right there, feed it through, and then you actually have something to help pull that elastic through. So this next thing applies to anybody that is really messy and you're taking pins out of your project and just kind of throwing them everywhere so they're all over the place, and if it's hard for you to stay organized, this thing will save your life. So what that is a magnetic pin caddy. So I always have multiples of these because I have a ton of pins, and whenever I'm sewing, I literally throw them. I just throw them everywhere just to get them out of the way. When I've got stuff pinned to the side, I'm just like just getting them, just going through my project, not caring where they land. This helps a lot with keeping them organized, in place, easy to access, and also a little bit safer. To me, much safer than a pin cushion. I personally have had the displeasure of stepping on a pin cushion on the wrong side and had a bunch of pins in my foot. That was absolutely horrific, and I don't like to think about it, but it happened, and this is a lot safer. Alright, so now that we have talked about pins and how to organize your pins, what you can use as an alternative other than pins are these little guys. These are called Wonder Clips. They're really great. They're pretty darn strong. They come in different sizes too, so they do have longer ones. But so they basically will just clip onto your fabric and they won't leave holes. So if you're working with something like a leather-like material like this, instead of pinning it through it and making holes, you can just pin it just like this to be able to sew it together. And it's great because on one side, on this clear side, they're nice and flat, so they're not going to get like smooshed under the machine, and they're easy to move out of the way as you're sewing. I also work with a lot of like vinyl coated fabric. I love 4-way stretch vinyl, so having these types of closures are very, very important for keeping your fabric in place and just making it overall more manageable and making sure that it doesn't weaken by putting too many puncture holes in it with regular sewing pins. Alright, so I mentioned this earlier, but I really like to work with a lot of vinyl fabrics and just plastic coated fabrics, leathers, stuff that's kind of hard to sew. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is one of my absolute favorite sewing essentials of all time, and that is the wonderful walking foot. This foot is just an interchangeable presser foot you can use on your machine. This particularly is used a lot in quilting. What this does is it adds an extra layer. If you can see these little jagged boys right here, they look like they have little teeth. But those are feed dogs. They are also located on your machine, and they help the bottom layer of fabric go through a lot easier, but when you're sewing unusual fabrics or multiple layers of fabric or something with like batting or something thick in between, sometimes the top layer does not feed as quickly as the bottom layer with those feed dogs. So this adds feed dogs to the top, so it helps those either multiple layers or strange fabrics. It helps it glide easier through the machine, makes it much easier to sew, and makes your seams look a lot better. I highly recommend it. So one of the most important things I do want to show you guys is obviously one of the most essential tools that you will need, which is a sewing machine. Currently, I use the Brother SE400. That's a terrible sound. I currently use the Brother SE400. This machine has not only sewing capabilities, but also embroidery. The reason why I enjoy this machine is, first of all, it's really reliable. I like the fact that you can do sewing and embroidery. It really comes in handy for cosplay work, especially. And one of my favorite features on this machine is the automatic thread cutter. It makes work go by a lot quicker. I notice a huge difference, whereas when you don't have that, you have to literally take your threads, snip them every time. Automatic thread cutter, I love it on my machine. I've been using this machine for years now, and I really love it. It's what I recommend to a lot of people that are getting into cosplay. Though, just as a quick other recommendation, if you are brand new to sewing and you're looking to start with the machine, I highly recommend the Brother CS6000i. It's something a lot of my cosplay friends started with. It's a great reliable beginner machine, and it doesn't have quite as many functions, so it's not as confusing, and it's a lot cheaper. So I think that's a great machine to start with. And on the subject of machines, another machine that I use aside from my embroidery / sewing machine is this bad complicated boy right here. This right here is my serger. It is a Brother 1034D serger, and it's probably one of the most affordable ones that you can get. Its main purpose is finishing up raw edges and making the whole garment look nice and neat, especially if you're not using a lining. It's also great for sewing stretchy fabric, and it can even be used to make ruffles and gathers. So it's a great nifty machine. If it is something that you can afford, I highly recommend it. Alright, so the next thing I want to share with you guys is my personal favorite tool when it comes to marking your fabrics, and that is Tailor's chalk. I know there are lots of things like water-soluble markers, there's pencils, there's all kinds of different ones. I've used almost every single one of them, but this Tailor's chalk in particular is my favorite. It's kind of waxy, actually, in a way. I'm not 100% sure of the exact brand, but this is something that I actually discovered while I was doing alterations. And the reason why I like this so much is because it leaves no trace. I have personally used the blue and the purple water-soluble pens, and while they wash away with water initially, the ink will appear back up randomly. And I don't know if it's because of heat. I don't know exactly what the cause is, but I've had it ruin a few of my fabrics before in the past. I don't know what I did wrong, but I don't trust them anymore. So I love using this, especially with darker fabrics, which honestly is predominantly what I use. Tailor's chalk does come in different colors as well, so if you are working with white and light colored fabrics, there are other colors that you can use. And instead of it being water soluble, it goes away with heat. So when you iron it, it'll go away. For example, with this fabric right here, I just have this dark fabric. I have my Tailor's chalk. So, you know, you can mark your fabric. Mark your fabric any way you want. And then it very easily will go away with heat. Bam! Gone. Done. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is your iron. Having an iron is so important when it comes to sewing. You use your iron for ironing out wrinkles in your fabric. You use it for pressing open seams to make sure everything looks nice and neat and flat and beautiful. I personally love this iron. This is a Chi iron because first of all, not only is it really sexy, I think it looks like a badass mech.
また、バク戦術偵察タイプの頭部を装着し、ビームサーベルとして使ったこともある。
I personally love iron aesthetics, and I love it when they just look like really cool mech badasses. So that's part of the reason why I chose this iron. Another reason is it's got a really nice smooth plate that is very easy to clean. It has an auto off function, which for me is extremely important because I'm paranoid, because whenever I'm sewing, I like to leave my iron on so it's ready to go. But I prefer it to not be on blazing hot the whole time. So the fact that this has an auto off function is really nice. And the fact you can just do like this and it'll heat up immediately, and it heats up very, very fast. It has a great function for steaming. So for me, this is perfect. Another reason why I do really like it is it has this really nice point. So it's really good for pressing like corners and just like tight spaces and everything. So yeah. For my personal recommendation is this bad boy. I think it's great, and it has served me well over the past year. So now it's time to talk about steamed hams.
Hope you're prepared for steamed hams.
No, this is a Tailor's ham. I call all of these hams, even though this is a seam roll. Either way, it reminds me of food. So these, I absolutely love using these because these allow you to press out curved seams. So if you have princess seams, anything that's going along a curve, to iron that out properly, you use a ham like this to just go over it, press over that with your iron, and that'll make the seam nice and smooth and flat, even though it's on a curve. Trying to iron out a curve on a flat surface is next to impossible, so using this really, really helps. And a seam roll, it basically does the same thing. You can stick it inside of the garment and easily smooth out and press your seams. It's also great for pressing seams for sleeves so that it only gets the side of the sleeve you're working on, and it doesn't press the other sides and make more wrinkles. So these will make your life a lot easier, and I think they're a great tool to have with your other sewing notions and essentials. All right, so yeah, you guys, that about wraps it up for some of my absolute favorite sewing tools and essentials. I hope that the video was informative. I hope it helps you guys out in choosing what tools you want to use when it comes to sewing. I am self-taught, so there's still a lot that I don't know. I'm always down for hearing any suggestions or any recommendations that you guys might have. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'd love to answer the questions. If you want more videos like this, let me know. I already plan to show you guys some more sewing tutorials, cosplay related tutorials, tips, tricks, just kind of explanations of how I do things. I do a lot of my cosplay work live on Twitch or Caffeine. Basically, I live stream every single week. I try to fit in as many live streams as I can. I love to show you guys my work process. So yeah, if you want to tune into my live streams and see me work live, you can also ask questions there. And I just appreciate you guys so much for being here. I hope it helped you out. I hope you're inspired and motivated, and I will keep making videos to help you get inspired and motivated if you're not already yet. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!